Welcome back, everybody, to the ND and Free podcast in partnership with the Awareness Space, a podcast and media platform that explores how NDers can live their truth and feel free in their lives. We're here from inspiring coaches, therapists, experts, and fellow NDers from all over the world. I'm Owen Morgan, a wellbeing coach and now fully qualified ADHD coach at the Awareness Space. I have over 10 years experience in the wellbeing sector and I've interviewed over 500 people across 4 podcasts. I received my ADHD diagnosis at 41 and it changed my life. My mission is to explore how the human spirit and understanding our whole self can bring us a life full of possibilities. I'm very excited today, guys. One of my heroes is on the show, which I'm sure she'd like to hear. We have Dr. Emma Offord. Dr. Emma Offord is a clinical psychologist and the founder of Divergent Life, a neuroaffirming service that exists outside of the traditional medical model. Emma specialises in working with autistic and ADHD people, particularly late identified women and families, offering assessments, coaching, and programs that support nervous system regulation and self-understanding. She is passionate about helping neurodivergent people reclaim their voice, move beyond shame, and thrive in their own way. What a gorgeous intro. Welcome to the show, Emma. This is a real privilege for me, and I want to thank you for taking time out.
Well, thank you for having me, Owen. Really looking forward to talking with you.
Me too, me too. I encourage people, go to the links in the description, check out what you do on social media. I think some stuff you're sharing is so powerful. And hearing you on a show was what brought me into your space. And your energy and your authenticity is wonderful and makes my nervous system feel really, really happy.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, no problem, no problem. So give us some context, Emma. If anybody doesn't know who you are, let us know a little bit what you're doing in today and at the moment. What does your business look like and how you're helping?
Yeah, so I run a neuroaffirming therapy assessment coaching service, private service called Divergent Life. And it's expanding into all kinds of different areas, but it really originated with the concept that I felt current services were not meeting neurodivergent people's needs and that we needed something quite different. And kind of did a massive hyper focus, did loads of extra training outside of my clinical psychologist role, became a sensory practitioner, looked into giftedness, just deep dived and feel like all of that very holistic and additional training helped to create something very neuroaffirming. So um, what people will not experience is a medicalized clinical experience when they work with me or people in my team. Really, what I hope people experience from the very beginning is just something extremely healing and neuroaffirming and just a safe, welcome space to unmask and to explore the neurodivergence.
Yeah, I love that. And I was thinking the other day, I have a few people on the show that do assessments and just thinking how much this has exploded in the last 5 or so years. How this has come, awareness of ADHD, autism is becoming much more, there's a long way to go, much more accepted. There isn't, it's hard to know where to go. And if there is actually enough services for the amount of people who are discovering their truth on this journey outside of, especially in Britain, the NHS model. And from what I can see, there isn't that many assessors out there. And are you finding that you're noticing that with the kind of people approaching you, the kind of numbers, or do you think we're still on the journey of more people realizing they want to have assessment, if that kind of makes sense?
Yeah, I know other assessors and I no longer work for the NHS, so I feel like I'm not as connected to how they do things, but all my clients, they tell me their stories of, approaching the NHS and trying to get assessment that way. Yeah, I think there's a long way to go, a really long way to go in terms of how we assess people and help them through that journey of identification. And I think that there just simply is way more demand than there is any resources. And something that and it's hard to talk about this because I respect colleagues, I respect the NHS. I loved my time working there. But some of the approaches are quite traumatic for some people. So being vulnerable going forward for an assessment is an incredibly, incredibly um, disempowering experience if you feel invalidated, if the questions are kind of feeling more like they're questioning whether you really are truly neurodivergent, not being believed or being in a setting that like feels like an interview or something very um, just uncomfortable and unsafe. And, lots of people have walked away from those kind of assessments and just said to me, it was really, really unpleasant. And, they really didn't feel like that helped them understand their neurodivergence too much either. So, that's where I'm coming from when I say I think there's a long way to go. Because we don't want people going for assessments and walking out feeling like that. Yeah, we want people to feel completely safe and, you know, cared
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, I think, as you were saying that, it kind of, it's the same as if you look for a therapist or a coach. I think the good thing about it's nothing, it's no slight on the medical model over there. It's more about finding the person or the people that hold a space in a certain way for allowing you to really deeply feel your truth as it arises. I think the good thing about the private assessment is that you can do that. You can look around, you can watch videos, you can listen to podcasts and choose like you would a therapist or coach, the person you best feel will hold the space for you whilst going through the protocol and the steps that have to take place. I think that's a big part of it too, is in the NHS, that isn't something that they would ever be able to do. Have a library of different people you can choose from. And I think that's just the big thing, really. I think if you're looking for that personal, deep work, it's better to potentially look away from that model.
And also, um, you know, what is emerging and, in terms of people's experiences and stories that they're sharing, but also emerging evidence is that there are high masking, late identified profiles of neurodivergent people that will simply not get picked up using some traditional models and ways of assessing. And so they are the kind of people who are likely to feel that that isn't a satisfactory process, and they, will need to find the person who they feel they can trust, who will listen, who will look beyond a symptom checklist and really try to understand that mask that has developed over the years and believe that and work with that during an assessment.
Yeah, so true, because you have no idea literally what's going to come up through that process, what things are going to be uncovered, memories that they may not have had. So it's interesting how trauma informed and safe that space needs to be. I know it's obvious, not everybody has the resources, but as it grows, there'll be more options, maybe more ways of tapping into it if you are low on resource. So fingers crossed, fingers crossed. But for now, as an ADHD coach, especially, I want to hope I can just help people in their journey towards truth. But why, Emma? This is, and this is probably quite obvious at this point, but why do you care about helping neurodivergent people so much? What is it at your core that makes you want to do that?
Well, there's lots of reasons, but I would absolutely say it's my like call for social justice that is so compelling. So when I started to understand the neurodiversity movement as a human rights movement and all of the emerging evidence that was coming through that and the kind of redesigning of how we understand disorder and neurodivergence, when I really truly grasped that, there was no way I could go back. I couldn't go back to working in any different way. I had to like really throw myself into that way of thinking and working. And that required, that I redesign my service. It required that I learn new methods and new ways. It required a lot of change and unlearning. I had to unlearn so much that I'd held or I'd been taught or I'd believed. I mean, actually, it felt more like it just came crashing down than a slow unlearning process. And then I had to build it all back up again. And it's also like a personal journey because along that discovery was my own identification. Whereas I'd had, a lot of knowledge about my sensory sensitivity and my kind of OCD like neurobiology and reactions to things, I didn't didn't realize the extent of my neurodivergence, I guess you could call it. So, it's also a very personal experience for me as well. So, one, I want to provide something for people that I provided for myself in the end. And that was so life-changing, my experience. It just changed everything for me. It changed how I decided to work. So I did put myself first in some kind of choices about how I work. I could design my work around my sensory needs, around my executive functioning needs. And I just thought other people deserve that as well. And so, really wanted to give them hand over some of this knowledge. I didn't want to just sit with it. I wanted to share it with other people, and just give them that liberation that I experienced.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I was nodding away because it's kind of like when you enter the community, when you get your diagnosis, whatever that looks like, and you enter the community. I don't know, it felt like my life had changed forever because I was like, oh, I enter this space and I can see all of this, without being too extreme, all the suffering, people who don't know what to do with this awareness. You get a diagnosis doesn't mean, hey, great, I know who I am now. Let's do this. It's like, now what? And I get emotional about it because I was welcomed in a big hug, and I felt like you. I felt like, right, I'm going to do a podcast for a year. I'm going to interview all these people. That transformed my life to understand my own neurotype, but also meeting all these wonderful people on the way. It's been so, so beautiful. And I think that's what I love about this space. And I've had no hate at all in the first year. There's been no horrible comments or anything. It's just so lovely. And I think if you are diagnosed and you have a past experience and skills like you with the clinical psychology and all the coaching and therapy work that I've been doing, why not try and help other people in the way, isn't it? I think it feels silly not to be honest, doesn't it?
It does, and what I just love is that it can bring such safety, and and who isn't motivated by seeing somebody suffering and knowing a better way for them, or being able to like point somebody in the direction of something that could really, really help them and be really validating. And that's just enough in itself.
Yeah, it sure is. I can't wait to start coaching and make a difference and have so many contacts as well that I can refer people to, and as many assessors as I can have in my library on the website, the better, really, which is really powerful. So yeah, you touched on your diagnosis there, and your own journey. So yeah, thank you for that one. I'm aware I really want to fit in all of these wonderful questions we have here today. The next question is a bit complicated, really. I'm realizing over time, but the key blocks and struggles that people come to you with, just briefly, are there the traditional things? Is it coming to terms with the shame of what they've done in the past, or trying to figure out who they are, RSD? What are the key things you are seeing coming to you? I know maybe outside of assessment, obviously, but what are the key things that you tend to see?
Yeah, we see so much. So, there's a huge amount of shame and masking as, major themes of people's lives. And with that feeling that they don't know who they are, that they are out of touch with their identity, they feel really adrift. And that's not very grounding or very safe or secure if you feel really detached and disembodied from your identity. And people have really been struggling to find a way back to themselves. Like, how do I connect? How do I know what's the mask? How do I know what's shameful, what isn't shameful about, events of my life? How on earth can I like reconstruct my identity given I'm late identified? And that's probably more the late identified population because they've had so many years of this. Um, um, and that is a massive, massive block. And I think with that as well is the fact if you're late identified, there's this huge doubt of, well, if I were truly neurodivergent, surely this would have shown up much early on. So do I really deserve to be in this space? Should I be here at all? Can I be part of this community? And so I think there is also for them a lot of unlearning about stereotypes around neurodivergence and you know trusting the process, trusting themselves to value that they belong in that community, and they don't have to tick every symptom checklist. They don't have to only fit in one neurodivergent box. You can blend hybridly across as many as you feel you identify with. um, so there's definitely this whole experience about identity deconstruction and reconstruction. um, And then I think for a lot of other people, and maybe those same people, there's this sort of physicality to their experience. So many have had relational trauma experiences. The masking has, taken a toll on their body. Some people are experiencing burnout, or chronic pain is another um, experience people talk a lot about. Not trusting their bodies because they've been so disembodied, so masked, so much in the external world, they haven't related to their internal world. They've had to switch off their sensory sensitivity or push through it. And, so I think a lot of people's bodies have been through so much trauma, physical, psychological, relational, that there's, a lot of physical healing that needs to take place as well as psychological reconstruction. And then also a lot of people say to me, oh, okay, here's my discovery, here's my identification, but the world hasn't changed or caught up with this. So I still have to go back into that world. I have to go back into that place of work or back into that relationship or back into that school. And are they going to believe me? Is anyone going to change? Is this going to be more painful? Now the mask is off and I know what I need and I can't get it. And how do I self-advocate because I don't feel confident to do that, or I don't know how to do that, or it frightens me to do that. Like there are a lot of struggles and blocks that exist for people. And those are, a few of them, but not the whole list. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think it's actually way more complicated than we might think, because of the impact it has, yeah, like you said, on our body, on our nervous system, on how our hormones work. I'm
Mhm.
recently had a testosterone check, and my testosterone is insanely low, as is my friend. Now, do I need to look at TRT? It's quite common with ADHD in men at this age. So that's a whole thing I wasn't expecting. My testosterone is a problem. I basically function off stress hormone.
Mm,
So I've got to get emotional about that as well. This must be the space you're holding, Emma. But I think you're right about the sort of fatigue and the burnout. I think that's the bit that people talk about, but not that often. It's the actual toll, like you said, the toll it actually takes on our nervous system more than anything. Just the complete overstimulation and having to push because we still have to fit in and we still have to do things. And then that emotional component of our family members who are outside of the community kind of get it. They're like, oh, I'm glad you got your truth. And they give you a thumbs up. And that's the compassion you get. They don't particularly, not in a bad way, need to know more about it. But I feel like maybe you should probably find out more about it. And then we can build our relationship and build this new flourishing connection. But we don't have the energy right now, do we? Especially me in the first year to be
no.
convincing these people of what exactly.
That is a huge, huge thing that I see. I'm glad you brought that up, Owen, because, I've seen relationships completely break down through this because the dismissal and the invalidation continues, or maybe in a relationship, in a couple, in a partnership, one it doesn't believe that any of this even exists, or there's a real rejection. And when you've lived a life of rejection and masking, you can't cope with that in your close relationship. So I see a lot of relationships break down, and it's really sad for people that they can't be more curious or hold space for that person's story. They don't have to be convinced of that, but they can, accept it and, you know, be this curious, open, attuned human being without having to subscribe and read all the neurodivergent books out there. They don't have to do that, but they can believe the person.
Yeah, and kind of adjusting, reasonable adjustment, as they would say, oh, what
Hmm.
does this mean? What would be a better version of when we spend time together, the rest of the family?
Yeah, yeah.
Just like that curiosity is very special when people ask you curious questions, not like they're, okay, I better find out more, but this real sense of, oh yeah, what can I do differently? Oh my God, it's the best. You feel so seen. Oh my God, am I allowed to like tell you um, that I might need to pop off for a little, after 10-minute intense chat. I might just need to decompress for a second in a different room and use fiddle toys or whatever and come back. I mean, that's amazing. People are like, yeah, cool, go for it. And I think
Exactly.
that's what's so special about the ND community is the people who I've met online, all the friends that I've made. I can just message them and we can just share what is perceived as a bit weird and a bit silly that we're having to do these things. No, I get it, mate. I do that too. And it is the best after 40 years for me of not knowing why I struggled with stuff. I was like, oh, and it is a game changer, but
Yeah.
you need to know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Right, let's actually jump into these questions of the time that we've got. We've got a good 20 minutes, guys, so stick around. You mentioned it earlier about the body, so it's a good place to start. So, what are your thoughts on the bottom up part of the neurodivergent experience? We talked about it on the pod quite a bit here and there. But there's a lot of talk about the brain, the wiring of the brain, the signals it sends, what it does to your nervous system. But what about the other way around? So, nervous system, emotional centers up into the brain. So, what are your thoughts on how our body plays a part in the neurodivergent experience, in the whole holistic cycle of it?
Yeah. I mean, from my education and from my conversations and my work, it's very clear to me that um, neurodivergent individuals have a more sensitive nervous system. And that means they might react more intensely, more frequently to stimuli in the environment, like in their bodies and outside of their bodies, that other people might not even register. Um, it can also conversely be that the neurodivergent body needs a lot more input in order to regulate or to take notice of things. And so it's not always a sensitivity, but it can be, that they need their attention directed in order to process some information in the environment, or it might be that they need to move in order to be able to listen and concentrate. So, you know, they aren't just a sensitive or only a sensitive nervous system. They can also be, a whole kind of spiky profile of lots of different needs. And I think that's what people don't understand is, again, that complexity, that somebody isn't purely sensory sensitive or easily triggered and dysregulated by, you know, uh, certain environments or, relational and social expectations. It can be that they can really excel and deep dive and need some, and others are completely triggering for them of their nervous system. So I think that complexity is really missing in understanding the neurodivergent person. And then there's the trauma on top of that. So a system becoming more sensitive, perhaps, or more dissociated and therefore like more distant from emotional and physical connection. And that complexity needs to be understood and teased out as well for a lot of people. Um, but, we might say, generally speaking, that a neurodivergent person is, many are going to describe that their body is sending signals that overwhelms them. So these meltdowns that people talk about of just feeling in freeze or shut down or in fight flight, that their survival responses, they're going to be organized by them more frequently than a predominant neurotype nervous system. And so they're in and out of these states quite a lot. And if they're not, they might be avoiding things that might trigger those physiological nervous system states. So, um, that has huge repercussions on how they feel, whether they feel safe or not with certain people or in certain environments. It informs how they think about the world, how they think about themselves. But, without understanding the body and how the body is organizing, how they physically and psychologically and relationally feel in this world and how often they feel safe or not safe, then I think you're missing a massive component. You're just going around in circles if you're just offering talking therapy or just trying to work with the thoughts and beliefs. You have to think about the body and all these micro stressors and how they've stacked up over the years and over time for that person. So I really think we need to have more of a movement towards embodied neurodivergence and thinking about that. And I really think about that in the therapy world and in the psychology world that, the heavy dominant talking therapy model really needs to have much more of an embodied perspective.
Thanks so much. I could listen to you all day talking about this particular topic. It's one of my favorite things in the world, especially as I see the polyvagal flip chart behind you there, which is my favorite flip chart in the whole world as well. Um, but the thing you touch on there, I think it's really important for people to understand is that it's kind of like your your mind, your brain, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really know what's real or not real. Your body doesn't know what's real or not real. It's just interacting in the environment around you.
Mm,
It's feeding information and messaging, and your brain's trying to unpack that. What does this mean? What do I need to release? Do you need some cortisol? Do we need to move towards parasympathetic? Is it safe enough to be parasympathetic? Something I heard the other day
mhm,
is with sleep problems, do you feel safe enough to sleep? In your
mm.
body, does your body feel safe enough in that environment to sleep? We forget about that, you know?
Yeah.
The kind of even the area you live in or noise, which is triggering from something in the past, your body braces. But the body and mind doesn't know what's real and what's not. So there is part of you that has to interact with, okay, what's this? And being curious. And if I've learned anything in the last year, sorry, is starting to understand my body. Is exactly what you're talking about. I've had to work on what is this? What I thought was anxiety now feels like sympathetic, but what is it? And then I realized I spend most of my time in sympathetic and not in ventral, vagal, or parasympathetic. So I spend a lot of my intentional time moving
Mm,
towards what I know will bring me parasympathetic, ventral, vagal states to allow my body
mhm.
to kind of just take a break for a sec and pump some of that good hormone into the system. It does take a lot of introspection, which I know can be a bit tricky with some neurotypes. So yeah, what are your thoughts there? This sense of we're having to like interact with our mind and our body to say what's true or not true. It's quite a hard thing to explain, but in my head, it kind of makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. And it is a difficult task because the layers of disembodiment and shame around listening to your body as a neurodivergent person, there are so many layers for a lot of people. And, you know, to give themselves almost that permission that I can trust my body and I can listen to what it's telling me is, a huge component of healing and some of the trauma work, really. So, I'm thinking about, you kind of gave some examples there, but I was thinking just about some conversations I've had this week where, some children and many neurodivergent children don't like to use school toilets, or, they don't want to eat, people don't want to eat in rooms where there's certain smells because of their sensory sensitivity, or whatever component of their neurobiology is contributing to that survival response. So people are shaming neurodivergent people all the time. You should just be able to eat here, you should just be able to do that, like meet these basic needs, you should be able to go to sleep, you're tired. These are basic things that get really disrupted and interrupted when your nervous system is dysregulated and in those survival responses. So to go against what the world is telling you, or even people close to you are telling you and have told you for years about what you should be doing, what you need to be doing, and how you should be looking after yourself, and to actually trust your body and make different choices, that's a huge step for people.
Yeah, it just made me think, and sometimes they might say you need to just, if there's an experience environment that feels uncomfortable for you, if you just do it enough, you'll get used to it. Your body will train itself to get used to it. It's
Mm,
like, well, no, you actually have to help the body train how to get used to it. And sometimes you then can say, this isn't an appropriate environment at all for my sensory profile. I get that sometimes we have to do things, we have to try and find a way to cope with it better, which is fine. But that's you intentionally retraining your system by grounding yourself in that moment. But you need to know to do that. You need to know how to ground. And there's a story about a child I know, Emma, which is really interesting, is that he wasn't eating his lunch hardly at all. And it was quite interesting because it turned out over time, it was the environment that he was in. He said, it's so noisy in the hall and everyone's talking to me. And I just feel really like, ugh. And I can't bear to eat. He's hungry, but he can't bear to eat because the sensory environment is so overwhelming. The thought of eating is just a whole other sensory thing on top. And it wasn't to do with not liking the food or being distracted by his friends. It was the input from all the other senses that he had that was stopping him want
Mm.
to do something that's really important, like eating. So that's kind of an example, isn't it, of you need
Mm.
to see past just this behavior because it could be other things there.
You need to see past it and not make it the responsibility of the person to change everything about that situation, because that person, like you say, they might push themselves, they might start to mask, they might, maybe hide their food because they don't, they want to pretend that they've eaten it. All manner of things can be born out of them bearing the responsibility of an environment and a world that doesn't, fit around their needs and doesn't adjust to, what really needs to happen is in that situation is a different place for that person to have their lunch. It's quite simple, but the world just complicates it and makes it really difficult for that person to eat their lunch. So, that's happening everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other topic, isn't it? The social justice thing and structures. I mean, we'll have to bring you back on for that one. But it's, you touched so nicely here because the next question about nervous system, trauma links as well, and how we can meet our somatic experience. So let's keep riffing away here. But I think if I've learned anything about the nervous system side of all of this, like I said earlier, it's being able to track and map your state. It takes a bit of practice, but just seeing what each state may feel like, environments where it comes up the most, and what you're actually about to do next. What do you do that? Do you need to ground? So being out in a vast space, putting your feet on the floor, putting your feet in water for me. I love water so much. That really grounds me. Or do I need to move? Is it Tai Chi? Is it intentional movement? Is it actually just going for a run? Who knows what it may be? Movement, or sometimes it is, which I really like, is having a good old lie down and see if I can have a little nap, and have really soft materials nearby. Really makes me yawn and I start stretching my face muscles out and it feels wonderful. It's taken me a while to get here in a year, but I know that there's 3 or 4 things that I could do, and actually 3 of them might not work. So I guess I think that's part of the journey, isn't it? It's just really getting to understand your body and what works and what
Mhm.
doesn't, and maybe need help with that. Or maybe like me, I've
Mhm.
kind of learned enough to do it by myself. But yeah, what are your thoughts there? This kind of like all the different ways and learning what our body can do and map with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, upregulation is what calms me a lot of the time. So it's to metabolize the stored up, built up energy. So, you know, some form of exercise is one of the best ways for me to then relax afterwards. Like the worst thing is to, ask me to lie down and be still and quiet. I'm just going to get way more dysregulated, and it's not a good strategy for me. Occasionally it can be. I did a sound bath the other day and that was amazing, but it was
Mm,
full of noise and it was actually there was a lot of stimulation happening. And so, I could settle and I did feel very relaxed from that. But it wasn't the lying down component. It was the music and the noise. It was the vibrations that I could feel in my body as a result of that. So, I was getting a lot of feedback, which is what I need. Deep pressure is a real
mm.
regulation strategy for me. Um, yeah, I'll always take myself for a massage, and I need like a deep pressure experience as well. And that really, really helps me get back to a more parasympathetic state. And safety, like safety with people, finding my good people, people who will understand, and being able to just say exactly what I'm going through, what I've experienced with no filters, and to feel really safe, then that's just a wonderful experience as well of regulation. And so, you know, a lot of people all my life have given me advice about you need to relax, you need to like you never sit down, you're always doing stuff. Well, they don't understand me and they don't understand my neurobiology. Like I no, I don't need to do that actually. And can if you understood my neurobiology more, you wouldn't ever suggest that. I respect people who need to have totally different strategies, and sometimes we can't share a space together because I'm doing something totally different than they are. But isn't it wonderful that we all have such different needs and that we can, if we understand this better, we can respect it and support people in doing that.
Yes, it's so interesting because there is actually, you think there might not be that many ways, but there really is. And I think the pressure ones come up in, I think the episode before last, when we talked about that. pressure's been a game changer for me and my partner. It's absolutely incredible. If I use my massage skills, lucky I'm trained, on my partner's arms and I gently squeeze up, she starts to yawn and her state completely shifts. And that's just from a little squeeze. And she says she does kind of a squeeze. So squeeze the arm, really, really lovely. I know you know Nesty. We love Nesty. The whole family's got Nesty. Check it out, Nesty UK. They're amazing. So you get in a full body kind of pressure. The material is incredible, but we all get into we look like little caterpillars, in our little pods. But that pressure is very powerful. And I'll show you. See, we got a massage gun here, Emma, as you can see.
I've got one of those.
A lot of
Yeah.
NDs have massage guns with 20 different things on the end.
Yeah.
And I love putting that on my calf muscles, especially. I don't know, it makes my body tingle like it's releasing some sort of happy
Yeah.
hormone. So I think it's
Yeah.
it's knowing all that. And I think if you really basic about it, like the other day, I think it was a couple of weeks ago at work, I was really struggling. I was really it felt like anxiety. There was some anger in there too. It was quite interesting. And I thought, well, this isn't going to work for the whole shift. So I thought, because I work a lot by myself, so I have headphones on. So, do you know what? I'm clearly sympathetic and some dorsal here as well. I can feel it in my belly. So I just put on some old tunes from the 90s that I used to love. I thought I'm going to force myself to sing along to these beautiful songs that I used to love. And I could feel my body start to tingle. And I could feel like this little small little smile in each corner of my mouth. I could feel that my body was feeling a new sensation in that moment, linked to some happy memories and singing along. And then it just started to shift. And then a little bit later, it just gone. I was more grounded again. I carrying on at work, doing my thing. And all that sympathetic had released. And I kind of sort of helped myself up the ladder in polyvagal terms. It's a very crude way of seeing it, but I thought, you know what? My body's full of cortisol right now. So let's hit it with some happy hormone. And it worked. So there's another example as well. I don't know, it's quite crude, isn't it, Emma? But it kind of worked.
No, I think whatever works. And that's, that is the neuroaffirming approach. It's like if that works, then we're going to go with that.
Definitely, definitely. I have loads of little stories like this. And I just want to share them because they might be useful to other people. But as we wrap up towards the end here, I've got two of the beautiful parting messages. But just to touch on trauma just before we go, because it's the most popular episode I've ever done. If there's trauma in the title, it's at the top of the download pile. And I'm seeing that
Mm.
that is huge in this ND community, is understanding what is what's trauma, what's this? Did I have trauma because of the ND? Is it because I'm
Yeah.
more sensitive?
Yeah.
Um, it's a big topic, but you touched on it. But what are your actual thoughts about the links? Is it because of the ND? Is it just happens at the same time? What is your real deep thought there?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. But what I'll say is one of the most important things that I hold is that there is neurodivergent specific trauma. And that can be some of what we've touched on. It can be um, like a sensory experience of trauma where you have a trauma assault, of the senses. And so people don't recognize that noises, sound, smells, um, different kinds of touch and textures, these kind of things can cause that nervous system dysregulation, the survival responses, that on a repeated level, and especially if you're then met with relational disapproval and rejection, creates quite a traumatic experience within the body and in the brain. And so there is neurodivergent specific trauma that other people would say that's not a traumatic, that the components of that experience are not traumatic. There's no threat to life. There's no, um, there's nothing of, the components of what you're talking about, what you've just experienced that warrants or justifies calling it a traumatic experience. But what people forget is what is happening within the body. It doesn't always matter externally what's happening. We're not judging that. We shouldn't be judging that. We should be thinking, how does that impact somebody's nervous system? And does it take them towards a more trauma survival response experience? And is that complex trauma? Is that repeated trauma throughout their developmental experience, throughout their life? That's what I see in a lot of, especially late identified neurodivergent people, is complex trauma. And they don't know how to tease out what's neurodivergence and what's trauma. And I don't think we need to. I think we should understand that we are dynamic, interacting human beings all the time, shifting and changing and responding to the world around us and what's happening within us. It's almost impossible to untangle that trauma. And then we can take it to the next level of intergenerational trauma. Like, then how much of our undiagnosed parents' neurodivergent trauma are we experiencing in the womb and in our relationships with them? And, it's so infinite that I think it's such, it's a question that people get lost to and they can't find their way out. And I find it much more helpful to appreciate that trauma exists for everybody on some level. And maybe neurodivergent people are exposed to more trauma and unseen, invisible traumas. And that if we could understand that there is neurodivergent specific trauma, then and respond to that appropriately, then we might be able to help reduce that experience of trauma.
Thank you. I love that. Yeah, the neurospecific version of it. I like that. Not that these words get complicated, don't they? They've all got
Mhm,
meaning
mhm,
behind them and intention and judgments on each word. But I like that, is seeing it within itself, its own circle of experience. And I think when you think about trauma, it's just, have you had experiences in your life which your whole being, your systems couldn't bear, couldn't
mhm.
hold, couldn't repair, repairing the rupture? What did your body, your brain had to do because it couldn't? And just thinking of it that way. And I think if you think of those things now that you struggle with, I find that really overwhelming. And you say to them, in the past, have you had to deal with the similar thing, but you didn't realize and you were pushing through it anyway because you
Mhm.
didn't know? And then you can piece the two together and go, oh, wow, if I'm well by it now, Jesus, I did that for 10 years. And they wonder why they're burnt out and have chronic fatigue and things like that. It's all about mapping what happened to you in the past and how your nervous system has been shaped by that now, has actually shifted how it operates in a way that doesn't serve you. Or with like neuroplasticity, your brain's had to rewire because of this constant exposure to something that it can't deal with. So it fires neural pathways. Another show, guys, another show. But I love all of this too. And I think healing and authentic truth and finding yourself is quite simple in many ways. There's a little list of things you have to do: connection, safety, and meeting your needs and things like that. But then there's the more complicated part, which is what's happened to your body through that whole duration of time. And where is it, and how can you get it back to a place that feels where you can flourish and thrive, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, it's amazing. Oh my God, I could talk to you all day, but I can't. You're a busy lady. But yeah, I love all this stuff. I've got these books on the side of me, just talking about all the things we're talking about. It's polyvagal and awareness work as well. Daniel Siegel, interpersonal
Mhm.
neurobiology. Oh, the best. But thank you so much. We have two beautiful questions to send us off today. I can't wait to hear what you're going to say. So
Yeah.
we ask every guest, what is a key moment or an achievement or whatever it may be that you're most proud of that you've achieved, considering you had neurodivergence that potentially could have held you back? Is there a moment you look back, oh my God, I can't believe I did that despite my ND maybe stopping me?
Well, yeah, there's so many, but I think I'm going to have to say creating Divergent Life, this neuroaffirming space outside of the medical model, because um, you know, I have had to fight for that. I have had to go up against systems. I've had to go up against local authorities, schools, um, some medical professionals, and I've had to argue mine and families. Just the other day I was on a safeguarding um, conference and really fighting for somebody to not be sectioned and not be um, forcibly fed in an eating disorder unit. And we won the case, which was amazing. But, it's terrifying to fight such big systems when you don't have, I mean, we have a big community, but I'm often doing these things, behind the scenes and doing it on my own in my work. And, I'm really proud of myself for standing up for the community, for standing up for people and doing it while feeling, pretty scared inside. What's the outcome going to be? Am I going to get criticized? All my rejection sensitivity comes forward. I get the imposter syndrome, like, who are you to stand here and do this? Like, I have insecurities like anybody else, even though I can argue the case that I know my stuff. I have relational trauma where people have shamed me my whole life for being outspoken and being outside the box. I have to revisit that person, those experiences over and over again in this work. And, each time, it doesn't necessarily get in any easier, but I am really proud of doing that, and I'm really proud of doing it while being a mum. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, thank you so much, on behalf of everybody in the space for all the work that you're doing. And I know, in the cheesiest way, they say there's a social driving a lot of neurodivergent people, which is lovely, obviously. But I think knowing, like you say, you can't stop maybe the reactions or how it makes you feel or things it brings up. But if you're, I know, tooling yourself or arming yourself with what you can do in the moment, it means you can still do the things that you really care about. Without such a toll and a hit being taken. But I guess that's what we talk about today, isn't it? Is understanding yourself in the best way possible, not trying to make yourself into this perfect being that's going to be able to take on anything at any moment, but just tooling yourself up so you can do it in the most, I'm not sure if comfortable is the right word, but you know what I mean? And I think
I
it's like,
do. Yeah.
get to know yourself so you know what to do, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, for the safeguarding conference, I said I can't travel. It's over 2 hours away. That's just not something I can do, but I can do it online. And, just asking for these accommodations to make sure that, I can still participate, but I have to do it in certain ways, or else you're not going to get the best version of me. And I will feel very burnt out, and there will be a domino effect as a result of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, reasonable adjustments has come into my sphere in the last month or two, and I'm just really exploring what that means to me. And it's very powerful. You're like, oh wow, I could really thrive with this adjustment. That's really exciting. It means I can do things I thought I could never do. But
Exactly.
again, it's getting to know ourselves and understand ourselves, which is what the work you're doing, and hopefully the work I'll be doing with the coaching as well, which is amazing. So, your parting message, Emma, to finish up the show, can you give us your beautiful message of hope for any Indians listening who just need to feel like it's all going to be okay, so to speak? So, just a really positive message to us all.
I'm going to keep it simple. I think that I want people to really believe that thriving does not have to mean doing things the neurotypical way, and that they can become more embodied. They can trust what their needs are, and that is where they will find that place of thriving, not in the me I should be, not in pushing themselves to contort into a neurotypical box, but to, proudly hold space to grow full size in exactly their own neurobiology.
I love that. Thank you so much. I've heard 40 or 50 now of these little messages. I might put a little compilation together for an episode. Yeah, because it just feels fantastic. So thank you so much, Emma. I've really been looking forward to doing this. It's everything I thought it would be. I literally could talk to you all day, and it's so sad that we can't cover everything we want to cover. But I want to thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for taking time to come on to my show, and just thank you for everything you're doing for us.
An absolute pleasure to be here,
Mhm.
and thanks for having me.
Amazing. And where can we find you, really importantly? So where should we go? Where can we find Dr. Emma?
You can go to my website, which is divergentlife.co.uk, and you can find me on Instagram, which is confusing because it's Divergent Lives. Um, but yeah, those are the two main spaces that you can find me.
Amazing stuff. Put all the links in the show notes and encourage people just to type in Dr. Emma Offord on Spotify or Apple, and you'll find loads of cool podcasts that I've loved listening to as well. So plenty of content to hear from, which is great. So thank you, Emma. Thank you, everybody, for listening and being with us here on the journey. Really look forward to launching the business. So by the time you listen to this, it might be already be launched, but stick around for the Anque mushroom gummies advert at the end of the show. I had a lot of fun making that, and those gummies have changed my brain so much. So stick around for that and any other partnerships that follow. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next time for some more ND chat. I want to take this time to let you know about the ND and Free shop and directory coming soon to my brand new website, The Awareness Space. This site is in the process of being built and will also feature all you need to know about using my coaching services, including those with ADHD. ND and Free, alongside the podcast, is here to bring awareness of tools, products, services, and other supportive ideas that can help those with their neurodivergent presentations. Head over to our website and visit our ND and Free shop for a full listing, including chill zones, fidget collections, including their chill balls, which me and my whole family adore. On this page, you'll also find a range of coaches and other therapeutic services that may be able to help you in your life. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. ND and Free is in partnership with Anque Mushroom Gummies. Since my ADHD diagnosis in October 2024, I had been trying to find a supplement to help my struggle to focus, ease my brain fog, and help my overall energy. I'd been getting mixed results from multiple supplements until I came across Anque's Mushroom Gummies. So I removed all other supplements and began to take 2 of the delicious tasting gummies each morning after eating. By the 4th week, I really started to notice I could focus for longer and my brain fog wasn't anywhere near as bad. Naturally, they may not work for everybody, but I feel it's my mission to at least let you all know about these gummies. They include 10 functional mushrooms within them, including lion's mane, shiitake, and turkey tail mushrooms. With their non-GMO, gluten-free and filler-free gummies, they offer a tasty solution to an ND brain. You can order one-off pouches with 60 gummies inside or sign up to the discounted monthly bundles. Best of all, if you use my code OWEN15, you'll get 15% off your order. Visit www.anque.com and use code OWEN15 at checkout. That is www.ankhway.com.